Metal Jesus here, and I am down in Portland, Oregon, hanging out with Chuck of the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. How's it going, dude?
It's going great. Thank you for coming down.
Where are we?
We are in my game room. As you can see, I keep all my pinball collection here, and I also do repair and service work.
Very cool. Well, this is going to be perfect because I've been wanting to do kind of like an intro to collecting pinball machines. You are the perfect guy for that.
Well, thank you. I think I can help.
So for this video, we're going to talk about kind of what makes pinball special, especially for a noob like me who mostly plays pinball on the iPad. Oh, shame. So we're going to talk about what makes it special and also give you some tips on, what you need to know when you go out and buy these things to kind of get you started.
And there are decades of pinball machines out there. So to kind of narrow it down, we're going to talk about some of the more fun and collectible games. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some resources that get you started in collecting and playing pinball machines.
Man, I'm such a noob. I'm looking forward to this video. Let's take a look. So I mentioned in the intro that most of my pinball gaming is on the virtual. It's like the iPad.
Right.
Now, you have to admit that pinball on video games it's gone a long ways, right? It's almost like spot on, isn't it?
It's pretty amazing. In fact, they've actually copied a lot of the old pinball machines into the video game world. That's
right. So I've always kind of wondered, like, what is it about that brings someone like you to collect the actual physical thing?
Well, it's a few things for me. The first one is nostalgia.
Right.
I'm in my mid-40s, and as growing up as a kid in the 80s, pinball was pretty big, and I remember those sights and sounds and playing those games and the feeling of actual physical responsiveness from a game was just something that really stuck with me.
Actually, you hit upon something here, is that it's probably the nostalgia is the reason why you guys at the expo have pinball along with arcade machines, right?
It is, yeah. I think that pinball is a natural precursor to arcade games and to video games. It was something that had a place in recreation, in bars and restaurants and things before video games came along. And there was a time in the sort of late 70s, early 80s where a big switchover happened, but for a lot of people, pinball has still really hung in there.
The other thing too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there is this sort of repair thing that people really like, right? It's almost like working on old cars.
It is, yeah. Well, it's kind of like owning a Volkswagen. You have to like to work on cars, to work on like an old Beetle.
Right.
And the same thing with pinball machines. If you want to own an actual machine, it helps to like to work on them at least a little bit, because they almost always, because of the abuse they get, the constant movements and a steel ball moving around inside a playfield. Every time you play the game, there's always something that needs work, and so for me, that's where I get a lot of the pleasure from it, is not just in playing the games, but keeping them alive.
Also too, kind of going back to the car, or sort of like the classic car analogy, a lot of people complain that it's hard to work on new cars today, right? Because they're so engineered,
right,
and they're so precise, but yet you can go and work on a 1965 Mustang because you can actually see the components, right? And you can pull them off. You can get an average person can repair them.
Very much so.
And it's kind of similar to pinball, don't you think?
It is, yeah. In fact, the older machines don't even have any microchips in them. They're just relays and mechanisms that keep the score and everything. Certainly, the farther back you go, the more it is like that old Mustang, and there's not a lot under the hood. It's pretty basic. A lot of the newer machines that are coming out now, that Stern's putting out, have they're as sophisticated as a modern computer. They have everything in them that a computer does.
That's right. So we were cruising around today. You were showing me a bunch of arcades, Ground Control being one of those, and I was blown away by the latest. What was it?
Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz.
I almost said Wizard of War. I was thinking arcade machines.
Also a cool game.
I know. Yeah, but it was amazing to see. You were talking about the different LEDs that are in there. Like they had the RGB LEDs in there, right?
Yes.
Or the 3 colors essentially.
Yeah.
They had a full display. It was really impressive.
They're really immersive machines now, and that particular game has an LCD display in the back back box, and then all of the LEDs on the playfield, or the playfield lights, are RGB LEDs, so they can change the color to any of millions of colors.
Yeah, I mean, it's so cool.
Yeah. So there's so much control, and really, if you look inside a 70s pinball machine versus now, this pinball machine behind us has, I think, 4 or 5 boards in the head, whereas that Wizard of Oz, if you open that one up, there's probably a little board this big inside there that runs the whole thing. It's really,
but it's probably like a couple chips in there or something.
Exactly,
like that.
Yeah. But the power, the computing power, has really advanced and allowed them to do some really amazing things with modern games.
That's cool. Okay, well now we're going to move on to some buying tips, to what you kind of need to know to actually own one of these things. I'm thinking about getting my very first pinball machine, and I gotta be honest with you, I see this part of your game room and I'm like, holy crap, do I need to have all this stuff to get my first one? Is that what I'm looking at?
No, not really. I happen to really enjoy the repair and electronics aspect of the game. I have that aptitude, so for me, this is a good solution.
Right.
A lot of people create a game room in their basement and they want it to look like an arcade, not like a workshop. I think that's how most people want to do it.
Okay.
My advice to you to get started, the first thing is to prepare your wallet.
Right.
Because it can be an expensive hobby.
I hear about this a lot. Like, people complain about arcade machines being expensive, which they can be.
Right.
Pinball is even up here, right?
Yeah,
sometimes it can be.
Yeah. It's become very popular, particularly in Portland and in Seattle recently. And the games are going up in price for sure.
Right.
My advice would be, when you're picking a game that you want to buy, spend some time going to arcades and going to any place that has pinball on site and try the games out. See which ones you like. We're really fortunate in Portland that we have so many pinball games in arcades and in restaurants and in coffee shops that we can try out. It makes it a little easier here. But I know in some parts of the country it's a little more difficult. But you're going to save yourself a lot of pain and suffering by not buying a $1,000 pinball machine that you end up not liking.
Yeah, that's a very good point, especially with 40 years worth of pinball machines to choose from. I mean, that's a lot, right?
There are a lot, and there are a lot of kinds of pinball machines.
Yeah.
So you really have to spend some time and do your homework up front to make sure you're getting one that's going to work out for you.
So I'm kind of curious, is that when you get your first pinball machine, or you're looking at your first pinball machine, is there parts or components that you need to start at?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would do is plug it in.
Sure.
And turn it on. And I'm going to say that with a caveat that if you go to somebody's house and they have a pinball machine in their basement and they say, I haven't turned this pinball machine on since 1980.
Oh.
I would probably not turn it on right away. I would look it over first. You're going to look for blown fuses. You're going to test those yourself before you turn the game on and see if they're blown. Because if you let a game sit that long not being played and then you turn it on, you might let out the magic smoke, as they say.
Oh, really?
There will be parts inside. Yeah, that's the old cliche that every little electronic part in that game has some magic smoke inside. And if you let it out, then it won't work anymore.
I see.
So the idea is to try to look for the basic things that are going to cause a problem first. Games stored in barns will often get rodents and things inside. I've had a lot of games that had nests and stuff in them. Games that sit in damp basements get a lot of water damage or oxidation to metal parts. These are all things you have to watch out for, and things I would look for before I plug the machine in, because these are electrical machines, and there's potential there for a little bit of danger. And before I left one turned on in my house for any period of time, I would want to give it a look over.
That makes total sense. So, okay, now I mentioned that there's many years of pinball machines.
That's right.
Do they break down into certain types?
They do. In my mind, I kind of see 3 different types of pinball machines that you'll find out there. The first one is electro-mechanical, and that was the first general kind of pinball machine that you saw out in the world. Electromechanical means there are no microchips inside, there's not a computer.
Okay.
All of the scoring and all of the lighting and everything, the sounds, are all done with mechanisms, relays, and stepper motors and things.
I've seen those types. Those are so cool. I mean, they're not necessarily the most fun for me to play per se, but I appreciate how simple they kind of are, right?
They play slower than like a modern machine.
Right. Right.
But the great thing is the sounds and the sights of them, like they're almost as exciting inside the cabinet as they are on the playfield to watch in action.
Huh.
And they even have, like, all of the sounds that you get out of that game are coming from a bell or a chime, some mechanical mechanism. Yeah. See how it sounds like when you hit things and things are happening? It sounds like some serious shit is happening inside this machine. It's like clunk, clunk, clunk. So the electromechanical machines lasted up until about 1978, and then after that they moved to what they call solid state machines.
Okay.
And that simply means that they were run by a computer. The scoring is done on like a 7-digit scoring display. And those games are, generally they have electronic sounds in them. They're much more sophisticated rule sets. And the lighting on them is generally a lot more intense and exciting. Starting in the late 80s, early 90s, they moved to a type of pinball machine called a DMD machine, and that stands for dot matrix display.
Oh, okay.
You've probably seen those.
Yes.
It's a display that sits right under the back glass, and it has animations on it, and all the scoring is done there. That was sort of the next generation of pinball machines, and they tend to... There's a big price break between original solid state machines and DMD machines. You're going to see a big jump in price there.
Because more people want those?
Yes.
Okay.
If you look at any top 10 list of pinball games, 9 or 10 of them will be DMD machines.
Wow, okay.
So they're very popular, really deep rule sets, very exciting games. But then again, some of the old ones, some of the solid state ones are also just as fun in my opinion.
So I'm kind of curious then, is that if you, let's say you buy a pinball machine, but it's having a problem with its circuit board in the back, I assume there are places you can get those repaired, or do you have to do all that yourself? Do you buy the chips and then just resolder them? I mean,
all of the above.
All of the above.
Yes, there are people who will do repair work for you. It's a little. It's not like in the yellow pages or whatever, but you're probably going to have to do a little research, find somebody who has that skill set, get some references, make sure you're working with somebody good. But the great thing about collecting pinball now is that we have great resources like YouTube, where you can type in a few keywords and say, my machine is doing this. And chances are somebody has fixed that problem already, and they say, oh, you need to replace chip U23, and you order it for 25 cents and solder it in, and you're good to go.
So one of the challenges I run into when I go into a pinball arcade is I don't even know where to start. Like, and I hate to admit this, but I usually just go to like the movie that I like, or if there's an AC/DC or a Kiss pinball machine, that's the one I gravitate for. I mean, but there's got to be a better way. Like, hopefully you can tell me, like, which one should I be playing?
Well, yeah, it can be really overwhelming when you walk into an arcade or a restaurant or something the first time and you see all these games and they have such deep rule sets and so many lights, you don't know which one you want to play. And I think that's why a lot of the newer games that are coming out now are themes that people know, Metallica or AC/DC or Game of Thrones or Walking Dead or those kinds of games, because it gives somebody an immediate touch point on the game, and so they kind of gravitate to it. But there are a lot of really popular games with great gameplay that are kind of uncommon themes or themes that you might not expect. For example, arguably two of the top games that people really want to buy the most are from the mid-90s. Those are the Addams Family.
Which I would have never believed in a million years, right? I mean, it's like the movies were that bad. It's just, really?
It's based on the Addams Family movie. And it's a really amazing game. And also the... what do you call it? The Twilight Zone pinball machine.
You hear about that all the time.
It's not even really based on the movie as much as just the whole theme of the classic show. And that game it's just got so much going on and such a deep rule set. Great shots that are easy to make, and it's a game that doesn't get old. So people love that game. Yeah,
it's funny you mention that because I played that game for the first time just on a whim. I was at a little pizza parlor in Lake Chelan, and they just had two pinball machines. I walked up to it. I had the best time, and I'm not really that great, but I was so excited. you know,
it's a really exciting game. Great sound call-outs, just a lot of fun.
Yeah,
for beginners or experts.
Yeah, definitely. So, what other ones?
Well, some of my favorites are Star Trek: The Next Generation.
That's right.
Yeah, so a lot of these games are mid '90s games. That was really when pinball was on an upswing. New technologies had come out. Williams came out with a new board set that was really powerful. And so they were able to add a lot of playfield toys and different actions and cannons and all kinds of additional lighting into the game. And so it really gave pinball a new excitement.
Also voices too, right? I mean, you know, the characters, you hear Worf, you know.
Absolutely. In fact, all of those voice call-outs in the game were the actors going into the studio.
Oh, I see. That's what you meant for. That's the term call out.
Yeah,
Voice.
Like, it could be voice, it could be music from the game, or samples, or a phaser blast, or any of that. Those are what's going to tie you to the game as a user. You know, as a pinball fan and a Star Trek fan, putting those things together is what makes the game really exciting, in my opinion.
Very cool. Any others that are sort of like on the must list?
I would say Medieval Madness is probably one of the really popular games. It's kind of a castle-themed game. It has it's really famous for two trolls that pop up out of the playfield.
Okay.
That one is probably at the top of the list.
You were playing, what was it, Gorgon, or what was it?
Gorgar.
Yeah, you were playing that today.
Yeah.
That looked awesome.
Gorgar is a game that's actually a little older. It came out in '79. It's a solid-state game from Williams, and it was the first pinball game that talked. So it had, they recorded these voice samples of somebody saying all these words. A lot of times it'll say, "You beat Gorgar," or you know, he has all these different phrases, and they're just combinations of those voice samples that they put together.
Oh, interesting.
But the Williams games from that era were known for really great gameplay. That was just before they really had a great resurgence of pinball designers that came on board. A lot of the older pinball designers kind of retired, and a lot of new guys came on. Steve Ritchie is probably a name you've heard of. He didn't design that game in particular, but he did design a lot of games like that I have here, like Firepower, and they're all of the same era, and they have that same kind of feel to them. Really exciting games.
All right, dude. All good information. Let's pretend that I convinced Rebecca to let me buy a pinball machine and take up more room in my game room. So, what other resources are out there?
Well, there are a lot of resources out there on the internet nowadays for working on games and being part of a community. Three of the ones that I use most frequently are pinside.com, which is probably the largest online pinball community. Repair information about games, great place to ask a question. There's also the Killer List of Video Games, which also covers pinball. That has also forums and a good community. Really focused more on video games, but there are sub-forums for pinball on that site as well.
That's cool.
And then there is the Internet Pinball Database.
Sounds official.
It is, well, it's a great resource. It's not a community so much as a database of every pinball machine ever created. Pictures of the games, manuals for download, graphics for download, and then ratings that owners have posted for the game. So you can kind of get an idea where a game stands. Is it a very popular game, or is it one that maybe you should pass on?
I want to be hitting that site up when I get my classic 1970s KISS pinball machine.
Ah, yes.
I don't even know if that's a good pinball machine. I don't care.
It is. It's very popular because of the theme, mostly.
I'm sure. And then you also have some books here, too.
I do, yeah. You know, Amazon is a great resource. There are a lot of pinball-related books that have come and gone over the years that aren't even in publication anymore. You can go on Amazon, usually get them used. This is one that I like, which is Pinball Machine Care and Maintenance. And then there's a series of books by Michael Shalhoub, which is called the Pinball Compendium, and it has basically every pinball machine over the years. There are several volumes to this, and he has color pictures, but the really interesting part in here is the information that he puts in about the designers of the games. Really interesting stuff.
Wow, that's cool. All right, dude. Well, thank you very much for coming to my channel and doing this video. I was looking forward to it.
My pleasure.
Where can people find you?
People can find me at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo.
Yes, they can. And you'll find a bunch of pinball machines there, as well as arcade machines, as well as, oh, I don't know, NES games and so much awesome stuff, including me. I'll be there.
We got a few video games at that show.
You do. Yeah. So how about you also have a YouTube channel?
I do. It is
You don't know your YouTube URL.
I don't send anyone there.
Recycled Gamer, probably.
Is it? I think it's Recycled Gamer. Yeah, give that a shot. Look it up, and
if not,
I think it just has my name on it.
Don't you love how he put you on the spot with that? That's so
funny. If you want to see videos of me stumbling through repairing pinball machines, that would be a great channel to go look at.
If you can find it. All right, guys. Well, thanks very much for coming on, dude. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you guys for watching my channel and subscribing, and take care. This is my first video covering pinball machines, and I had a ton of fun making this video. Chuck is such a cool guy. I'd love to know what you guys think down in the comments below. And you know, it'd make perfect sense for me to also do a video on collecting arcade machines. What do you guys think? I think that'd be a lot of fun. There are a lot of big collectors in the Seattle and Portland area for me to, to get on the channel. So please let me know.
Here we go.
So hanging out in your game room, I see all these pretty cool looking pinball machines. So what brought you to this place that is with the stuff?
The place that is with the stuff. Sorry, dude, that messed me up.